Later, people like Sally Denton and numerous others are still blowing this all over the place as the smoking gun. Despite the fact that I think people like Steve and his associates and people in my end of things, historians like the late Dean May, he and I talked about this a lot, are just utterly bemused that anyone with a brain in his head could continue to think that this is a genuine historical document. Now, there's always a chance that it is. But if it is, boy, there's an awful lot of things we got to explain to believe that it is. But why is this? And I'm going to conclude with this. I find it enormously amusing that people who hate Mormons and who hate Mormonism believe that the best way to attack Mormonism is to attack somebody like Brigham Young. This may not be a popular thing to say, but I think one could very easily look at what happened at Mountain Meadows, what really happened at Mountain Meadows. It wasn't a conspiracy. There was no order from Salt Lake to kill these people. What really happened at Mountain Meadows may call into question some other flaws that existed in the 19th century Mormon church, other flaws that existed in the way decision-making took place and so forth, and make criticism that way. But for some reason, people from Bagley to Denton to Krakauer and whoever else, Chris Smith, the web is full of this invective. The only thing they can do to satisfy their bloodlust is to go after Brigham Young on this. Seems to me stupid. If I were one of those people, so what? A conspiracy manipulated by a rotten guy like Brigham Young seems to me much less damning than if you tried to call attention to some other things that may have been going on in Mormonism at the time that would allow ordinarily decent men to commit such a crime. Anyway, the point is, I think for you folks and your interest, this is a good example, it seems to me, of how people can pick up a piece of history, some of it accurate, much of it inaccurate, twist it, turn it just a little bit. It becomes a powerful tool. There are literally thousands of people out there now who, reading these books, think they now understand the real nature of 19th century Mormonism, and it, I think, could be further from the truth. By the way, Steve has a whole bunch of photographs of the Lee, where the Lee lead sheet was found, and pictures of the location, the man who found it, better pictures of it than I showed you. So, Steve, I'm sure you wouldn't mind afterwards if people want to come up and ask you questions about it. The information that just continues to come in, and Steve, nod your head or shake it if I'm right or wrong, is that this is a very, very bad, clumsy hoax, but nobody wants to believe that outside of Mormonism. Everybody wants desperately for this to be. I've got a former Mormon who's now a born-again Christian secretary down the hall from me, and I was preparing some materials a year ago to give a talk, and she came in and she saw that, and she said, "Oh, wow, that's great. Can I have copies of all that?" I said, "Well, I'm sorry, Carol, it's a hoax." And she said, "You're kidding." Practically brought her down to tears. I don't know what else you'd like me to say about this, except that my own belief is, let me summarize this way, that looking at incriminating statements, corroborating those incriminating statements the participants made for years afterwards, looking at other evidence that is incontrovertible, this was a bad decision made by local leaders. One bad decision followed by another. It's like you teach your kids. You tell a lie, you got to tell another lie to cover up the lie you just told, and then another lie to cover up the lie that you told to cover up the first lie. It goes on and on and on, and that's what happened that week in September of 1857 in Cedar City. I would also mention to you that the Glenn Leonard, Rick Turley, Ron Walker book is, as I understand it, finished. Some of you may have better information on that. Glenn Leonard, the Church Museum director, Ron Walker from BYU, and Rick Turley, the director of the archives at the church. They have had full access to everything the church has, including the Jensen papers, including the Morris affidavits and so on, and neither Bagley nor Brooks were allowed to see, and Denton didn't even come to Salt Lake to ask if she could see. And those materials, by their promise in public, will be available for the public to peruse when their book has been published in Oxford University Press. And I've had the privilege of seeing much of that manuscript, and I'm enormously impressed with what those men are doing. I think it's going to be an honest, painfully accurate depiction of what happened there. And the cascading series of bad decisions and events that led to was a horrible atrocity committed by Mormons with the help of the Paiutes. I also believe, without any question, even though the Paiutes now deny loudly that they were involved, that there indeed were, at the beginning of the attack, at the beginning of the week, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 Paiutes. There may have only been a handful left by the end of the week when the actual murders took place. But they were involved from the beginning. And anyone who suggests otherwise is just missing enormous amounts of evidence. So that's my view. And I also believe, when I was reading Will's manuscript, that if you accept his thesis, then you have to deny just about everything else we know about what happened down there. It doesn't make any sense in light of what we know happened that week, the decision-making process, the people who were involved. All of that has to be just entirely ignored if you believe that it was a conspiracy hatched in Salt Lake and conveyed there by George A. Smith. So that's my own personal view on it. I hope this is the kind of presentation you were hoping for. I wasn't really sure exactly what you wanted from me today, but I think that summarizes it pretty well. With that, we got time for questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I come to this discussion very late, and I just want to know what is the evidence or non-evidence that there were rapes, that there were women and children who were seriously harmed before they were.
Okay. Most scholars I respect don't think there were such events occur unless there were Paiutes who took people away from the scenes of the killings. And the main reason that we don't believe any of those stories is because it happened so fast. One scholar, Rob Briggs from California, who has done a really fine study of this from the point of view of an attorney, made this statement, which is kind of chilling. He said, whatever you say about the Mountain Meadows Massacre, it was really carried out well. It was timed beautifully. It was carried out with precision. It was correlation. They wiped them out in just a few minutes, and there wasn't time for that to happen. So those who suggest that, I think are going to have to revisit their thinking. I don't accept the accounts of those kinds of events, for me, are specious. That doesn't say they didn't happen, but it doesn't seem to be likely at all. Yes, sir.
My question relates to Brigham Young's involvement. Does the historical evidence lend it vague enough that the connections of Brigham Young are based primarily on your bias? I mean, just taking vague events, and if you're against Mormonism, well, okay, then maybe we can jump to this conclusion. Or is it pretty much just, bad research?
Some of all of that. In the case of Will Bagley, he started with the premise that Brigham Young ordered it done. And that's been suggested for years. And let me tell you this, if you go to Arkansas today and talk to the descendants, and I know dozens of them now, they all believe Brigham Young ordered it done. They all do. And when you say, well, why did he order it done, they almost all of them believe it was done for greed. That Brigham Young was in a tough spot, and Mormons were poor, and this train comes through with all this money and cattle, and ordered them killed for their money. So if you decide that at the beginning, obviously, and then you can go back and find, see, see. And that's what, in my view, Bagley did. And I tried to change his mind about that for years as he was working on the book. I was pretty good friends with him, and we took a couple of trips to the Meadows together and had a lot of time to sit in the car together. And I could see him making that very mistake you decided upon. As far as evidence, again, on the 1st of September, Brigham Young met with a bunch of Paiute sub-chiefs that brought up to Salt Lake by Jacob Hamlin. Demi Cunnington wrote in his journal, he was in the meeting, that Brigham Young said, you